So the next thing on the agenda is Frank Decker's proposed bylaw amendment. And it was sent to you, but Frank, where are you at? You want to come speak on that?
Motion first?
Yeah, he's got to come make the motion. Can you bring a copy of that motion?
I've got where.
Okay, so I'm making a motion to amend the bylaws in Article 13, Section 1, and Article 13, Section 8, to change the language so that it's required that the chairman schedule our central committee meetings 1 year in advance, and the language of the amendment, the changed portion of the amendment in section, Article 13, Section 1, says annual notice of scheduled central committee meetings shall be mailed to members of the CCRPCC no later than January 15th of each year, or no more than 4 weeks following an organizational meeting, and in accordance with Article 13, Section 8, prior to each quarterly central committee. And then the language change in Article 13, Section 8 says the chairman shall schedule quarterly meetings of the CRCC at least 1 calendar year in advance during the current term. Once scheduled, central committee meeting dates may only be altered by the chair if extenuating circumstances exist that require a change, and then only by consent of the board.
Second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded, and I'd like to speak, you have 2 minutes to speak on it.
Point of clarification, and maybe you can address it in 2 minutes. This doesn't mean that he has to schedule special meetings, like if we have to come together, you know.
I think it said the quarterly meeting.
Just a quarter.
Yeah.
So if there's a change, like we have to change it because the room location's not available, how does that happen?
So I think in the motion it said that the board can vote to change it.
For extenuating circumstances.
And
So it did say that it has to be scheduled a year in advance. Does it mean to say it's scheduled on an annual basis? Because if your first quarterly meeting might happen in January or February, and yet you have to have dates by January 15th, so that will only be a month ahead of time or less for that first quarter.
so it sounds like maybe you want to make an amendment to the
I
motion.
haven't thought about what it would be. I'm just wondering, you know, it seems to be a conflict with the first 3 quarterly.
Does it say a year in advance? I think, yeah. Okay. Carol, you.
Mr. Chair, I was going to make a friendly amendment anyway. This is very much like what we did in the 49, where I brought forward this exact, well, almost this exact thing. My recommendation was that we pre-schedule and send out in the first quarterly meeting of each year the 4 following quarterly meetings, which gave you clear out to the following year's first quarterly meeting. Therefore, you're getting, like he says, an annual calendar that doesn't quite go January to December.
Are you making an
This is an
amendment?
amendment. This is a friendly amendment. And the other portion of it is to please not schedule any quarterly meetings on a holiday weekend. Thank you. That's my amendment.
Second.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I believe Frank should first be allowed to make his 2 minutes speech in favor of it before we accept amendments.
That seems, I think that's probably correct. I don't know if it makes much difference, but can you write that amendment? It seemed like a lot of testimony there. I'm not, Carolyn, can you maybe just write what your amendment would be? You said there's gonna be a friendly amendment, and then you spoke
It's,
quite a bit, so I'm not sure what the,
okay, it's a friendly amendment that simply states an annual calendar beginning with the second quarterly meeting, going through the first quarterly meeting for the next 4 quarters.
I think you're gonna have to write
distributed every
that down.
January, and no scheduled holiday meetings.
Writing down.
Somebody write that down. And while you do that,
I'm not gonna need all 2 minutes, this is pretty simple. My thinking behind this was 2 reasons. Number one, we all have family, vacations, and things that we need to plan for throughout the year. And I think that if we had these 4 meetings set in advance, we can all plan for that. And I believe, I don't know, I don't have any data to support this, but I believe we would see a higher participation rate from our PCOs if they knew in advance that we were gonna have a meeting. The second reason is we have 2 committees, the Legislative Review Committee and the Performance Review Committee, that are bound by resolution to present their reports to the PCOs 10 days before our quarterly central committee meetings. And I believe that it's being very difficult for those committees not having dates set to be able to get those reports out to us. It's important that they get those to us. So those are my 2 reasons. With the friendly amendment, the one thing that you need to consider, and the reason that I wrote the bylaws amendment the way that I did, part of it is if you schedule an annual meeting, you could run into the point where we have a reorganization meeting and a change of chair, and the meeting that was scheduled from a previous chair for that first one that wasn't scheduled by the new chairman. So I just want you to understand it before we make a vote on that.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. Could the parliamentarian please advise if the language annual notice of schedule means that once a year, a schedule for the following year is to be sent out? If that's the case, I think it will simplify the other members' amendment. Can we look at the language of the proposal and just say, well, I think, look, what I'm trying to do, if you get it on the record that the body thinks that that's what it means, then.
Yeah, it seems to make sense to me, but I don't know if as parliamentarian I really have the authority to define that. But if the body believes that's what that means, we can still make sure that that's what the clear intent is.
so I think that we,
Chair asked if the body thinks that's what it means.
so, I don't have the language in front of me, but the, an annual notice shall be mailed to members of the CRCC no later than January 15th of each year, or no more than 4 weeks following an organizational meeting. Actually, let's see, and in accordance with Article 13, Section 8, prior to each quarterly central committee, notice shall be mailed to members of CRCC no less than 14 days before the date of said meeting. Yeah, actually, I guess I don't see where it says it's an annual, or a year's notice. It says that an annual notice, the way I would read it is annually, a notice would go out from the chairman of the scheduled meetings for the year.
Mr. Chairman, point of information, if you look down under proposed amendment,
Okay,
and the last column, it says at least 1 calendar year in advance.
okay. All right, thank you.
So that
Notwithstanding any other
that
provision.
counteracts against the 4 quarters.
Okay, so yeah, in the second half, notwithstanding any other provision of these bylaws, the county chairman shall schedule quarterly meetings of the CRCC at least 1 calendar year in advance during the current term.
I think if we change the at to a 4, it would make more sense.
Thank you.
For, let's see, for
At least, say.
say for at least 1
No.
For
calendar,
1 calendar year.
for 1 calendar year.
Then we would have clarification of the language.
So that's part of your amendment?
So we sort of have a friendly amendment on the floor or something, and so not exactly,
That
if-
amendment is
if-
actually relatively wrong.
Well, it wasn't,
For-
it wasn't, and it is.
It hasn't been-
okay. Hey, Ed, can you give me that?
I
wording
move
again?
that Carolyn's amendment read, changing at least in the section 8 to 4. when you-
For,
To remove the language at least and add for FOR.
You don't have to write that.
once scheduled,
With an effort to avoid holiday weekends, yes, that would be good.
oh yeah, because it still says for 1 calendar year in advance. For 1 calendar year in advance.
You have to also strike in advance.
No, you don't. If it has to be
One
submitted
calendar
to you every
year.
January.
With an effort to do not schedule on holiday weekends.
What does it say in advance of?
It says, notwithstanding any other provision of these bylaws, the county chairman shall schedule quarterly meetings of the CCRPCC for 1 calendar year in advance during the current term. That's, it's probably okay, I think. I think we know what it means.
Do we want to add with an effort not to schedule on holiday weekends?
How about within 1 week of the holiday?
So,
That's 2 weeks either side.
so I don't know if we can do this informally or have this without objection. So without objection, I'm going to add the for and strike the at least. And now, if we wanted the thing about holiday,
Holiday weekend, with an effort to avoid scheduling holiday weekends.
Should it be major holidays?
Well,
Yeah,
Groundhog Day.
because there's holidays every weekend.
Okay, if there's no objection, at the end where it says, for 1 calendar year in advance during the current term, with an effort to avoid holidays.
schedule on major holiday weekends. We don't want the National Siamese Cat Day.
Okay, so I'm going to read, it's just one sentence that we've changed. Oh, it's kind of a long sentence. Notwithstanding any other provision of these bylaws, the county chairman shall schedule quarterly meetings of the CCRCC for 1 calendar year in advance during the current term with an effort to avoid major holidays.
Yeah.
Yes.
Without objection. Okay, so,
First thing this body's ever made on.
would anybody like to speak in favor or opposition? So if you, I didn't hear the question being called, but
Call the question.
we're gonna do this again, and I just want to point out, if there's nobody gonna testify, we're gonna vote on it. If there's one person left standing that wants to testify, we'll probably let one person testify. But calling the question just adds another vote, so, anyway, but if you feel the need to call the question has been called. So we're gonna vote on that.
Point of order.
Point of order.
In order to call the question, you need to have one speaker speak in favor and one speaker speak against, then moving the prior question is in order.
Oh, yeah, that's true, actually. So it's out of order to call the question.
Is the motion maker? I thought it was one on each side.
No, debate consists of a minimum of 1 person.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the fact that Frank spoke in favor?
that's correct.
Okay. All right, I stand corrected once again. Thank you. Does anyone want to speak in favor or against this? Is that you, Rich? Come on up.
Yeah, we gotta vote on that, I think.
Oh,
No, it's not out of order.
wait a second. Yeah, so it's not out of order. Actually, that's why you were waiting. Thank you, Rich. Go wait some more. I appreciate your guys' help. So, so
The calling of the question is not to be used to prevent the body from speaking at all. I mean, I just find that objectionable.
I call the question.
question's been called. So, all those in favor of ending debate and moving on to voting for this, say aye. Aye. All those opposed to ending debates, say nay. Nay. Oh, for crying out loud. Now, we do have Sergeant at Arms here, Tom Kelly in the back, and Suzanne Clem right here. So we're going to need you guys to help us with a standing vote on this. So I'm not sure if you guys, maybe if you want to divide, maybe Suzanne, you can count from the that table thing in the middle forward. And Tom, why don't you come up to where she's at and count the rows behind. So I'll have you guys stand if you're in favor of ending debate. If you're in favor of ending debate here.
For a friendly amendment.
Okay, you can be seated. All those opposed to end debate, please stand. So you counted just behind the... What? Okay, you can be seated. Perform the math wizardry.
Other mic, mic.
The motion failed. This 42 to 22. And this, to end debate, it has to pass by 2/3 vote, and I think we were 1 vote short. So Rich, would you like to speak on the amendment, on the motion? Frank Decker's motion, want to speak in favor or against? You, come on up.
When to make word? How much notice time is required right now to set a meeting?
Pardon?
How much time right now is required to set a meeting? Is there any time required on the current rules to set?
No.
0. We're going from 0 to
14 days.
14.
Yeah.
Frank's amendment, the intent is to allow the committees to get their reports done and everyone to do planning. I think what we're debating here really is you know, I'm actually kind of in favor of doing a year scheduling in advance. Initially, when we do this, obviously, he's going to have to do this or do it, you know, January, he's going to have to get this out. But we need to go back and reconfigure the amendment a little bit because I think we still want to have the intent that we know a year in advance of a meeting. So in January, for example, we set the 4 quarters and the next quarterly meeting, we should be setting the year in advance, giving everybody that chance to do the planning. So I think we need to do a little bit of rework, so I'm against the amendment as it exists. I would actually, after this, make motion to table it and let Frank redo it a little bit, so that's it.
Anybody like to speak in favor of the motion?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to make an amendment.
Okay, what's your amendment?
The amendment would be to the first section, this is Article 13, Section 1, to strike the words "no later than" January 15th, make it "by January 15th," and after organizational meeting to say "whichever comes later." To strike the words "no later than," replace with the word "by," and after organizational meeting, insert "whichever comes later."
Second.
Okay, I get, see, so this reads, annual notice of scheduled central committee meeting shall be mailed to members of the CCRCC, and you want to change that from no later than to by January 15th of each year. And then what was the second half?
Or no later than 4 weeks following organizational meeting, whichever comes later.
Second.
And whichever comes later after the word meeting.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Jerry?
Did the gentleman who was just speaking at the microphone, did he make a motion?
I didn't hear a motion.
Not yet.
He
Okay.
moved to amend.
He moved to
Oh,
amend.
you mean, right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so, so your amendment is, this would read, annual notice of scheduled central committee meeting shall be mailed to members of the CCRCC by January 15th of each year or no more than 4 weeks following an organizational meeting, whichever comes later. Was there a second?
Second.
Christian, seconds? That's
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is simply to resolve what could be an ambiguity as to how the 2 dates relate. I consulted with Mr. Decker prior to making the motion to ensure that it was consistent with the intent of how the dates were given.
anybody want to speak in opposition? Not seeing any opposition, I'm going to suggest we just vote. So all those in favor of that amendment, that sentence will now read, annual notice of scheduled central committee meeting shall be mailed to members of the CCRCC by January 15th of each year, or no more than 4 weeks following an organizational meeting, whichever comes later. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The amendment to the motion carries. Now we're back to the main motion. Does anybody want to speak in favor or opposition to that? Seeing nobody rise, I'll call for the vote on that. So the
Chair, point of information,
yes, Frank.
can we have another amendment that we haven't voted on yet?
I don't think so. Yeah, are you familiar with the?
I believe it was Gary, the first amendment.
No, that was taken with no objection.
I guess not. I don't know. Okay, so rather than read this entire motion, we've covered that sentence several times, and then in the second one, we've made changes to the second one. Notwithstanding any other provision of these bylaws, the county chairman shall schedule quarterly meetings with CCRCC for 1 calendar year in advance during the current term with an effort to avoid major holidays. Once scheduled, central committee meeting dates may only be altered by the chair if extenuating circumstances exist or require a change, and then only by the consent of the board. So all those in favor of this amendment, say aye. This resolution or bylaw amendment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Now, this is a bylaw amendment, so it requires 2/3 vote, and, but we clearly had that, so thank you very much.